Welcome back to Olfactofiles. I'm Tara, and today we're going to talk about the house of Maison Violet. And this is a house that I've sampled before, I really love. I was very impressed with the first 5 fragrances that I smelled from them. And then I just earlier today was lucky enough to be part of an event that Tiger Lily Perfumery put together with a couple of the owners from Maison Violet. Anthony and Paul were there, and then there's a third owner as well, but he wasn't there. And basically they went through the history of the house, how they came to be the owners and kind of revive it, and then also went through each of the fragrances, talked about kind of the inspiration, the history behind some of them, and also like they included raw ingredients so that you could smell like in the raw form some of the ingredients that are featured in these different fragrances, which was really, really cool. So if you're not familiar with the brand, Maison Violet, and I'll try to maybe put a couple screenshots or photos that I took during the virtual event. But basically the house or the brand started back in the 1820s, and they were kind of like a cosmetics and perfumery at first, and then eventually evolved into primarily a perfumery. And then by 1955 were pretty much completely gone. And then just in the last few years, these 3 gentlemen, who are quite young, actually significantly younger than me, they decided that they just absolutely loved the history of the brand, and so they wanted to revive it. And so they looked, like they went out and they tried to find who owns it, and they were able to purchase the name so that they could revive this house. And what they started with were 3 fragrances that were originally from Violet, and they basically sort of recreated them as best they could, but like putting a little bit of a modern spin on it. And so I think that's really, really cool. I'm going to talk about the fragrances. I'm going to tell you what I think about each one. But basically, the fragrances all come in bottles that look like this. I'll go ahead and show you that. So I should say not all. There's one called Cycle 001 that comes in a different packaging because it's not part of like the heritage collection or whatever they call the ones that are kind of based on fragrances that used to be sold back in the, 1900s. But anyway, this one here that I purchased quite a while ago now is called Nuee Bleue, and it is just a gorgeous iris fragrance. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but just so you know what they look like. And the perfumer for all of them except for the Cycle fragrance is Natalie Lorson. Y'all know I love her. The perfumer for the Cycle 001, that was actually Patrice Revillard, I believe. And he also did Ooh La La, I think, from Theo Cabanel, which I recently purchased. And I actually see some similarities between the two. So I'll kind of bring that back up again when we get to that. But anyway, that's kind of an overview of the brands. They've been around now for a few years, I think, but it is steeped in history, which was really cool to learn about and made me appreciate these fragrances even more. So I'm going to start with the first fragrance that they talked about today, which is Sketch. And I think they mentioned, actually I can open this up and there's information in here. So if that'll focus, there we go. So there you can see some information. I'll hold these up each time so that way if you want to pause the screen you can read it. But basically this one originally was called Ombre Royale, so that should kind of give you a hint as to where this is going. And it says it's a Chypre patchouli type of combination. They've added nutmeg though, which is modern. That was not in the original. They actually were able to, for some of these fragrances, get vintage bottles and smell them. But like I said, they've kind of kept the heritage, but also made it a bit more to their tastes, and maybe in some places a little bit more modern, or just made substitutions where they had to, because for example, like they said with this one being a Chypre, they had to substitute out the oak moss and put in patchouli instead, which I guess is a common practice for modern Chypre fragrance. So anyway, this one is one that I'm considering buying. Part of the event, so I think it was $25 to be part of this event, and it included, of course, all the samples, which that alone is a great deal because the samples normally would have been more than this. but included all the samples and of course the event, which went on for more than 2 hours. Really cool. And then it came with a $25 off coupon for a full-size bottle. So I already wanted several of these, so I'm definitely going to get another one. But Nuee Bleue was the one that I loved out of the first 5 that I smelled the most. So I already purchased that one, and now I'm kind of deciding what's going to be my next. But anyway, okay, so let's get into Sketch. Oh, this is so nice. So Sketch has this like patchouli, vanilla, ambery thing going on with the nutmeg, a little bit of spice. It is so warm and cozy. I just want to like wrap myself up in this, and it does have a little bit of a vintage sort of feel to it, but still very, very much modern. I wouldn't say like when I smell this initially that I would think, oh, this is a vintage fragrance. I don't think it's a vintage fragrance. I think it is inspired by vintage fragrance, right? And it is, like, that's actually true. But man, this is just fantastic. One of my favorites for sure, although there's only one from this entire house that I don't really care for, and that's just because of my personal preferences. So anyway, that one is Sketch. It's fantastic, and I think very, very much unisex. I think a lot of guys would enjoy this one as well. The second fragrance that they talked about today is, I'm going to butcher this, Pourpre d'automne. It means purple autumn, so we'll just say it in English there. And again, here is the information if you would like to pause and read that. But this one, I think they said, yeah, so this is the one that they said like back in the heyday of Maison Violet when they were really popular and, you know, sales were phenomenal. This was probably the most popular fragrance. Based on their research, this seemed to be like the most popular of all the fragrances that Violet ever sold. And I can definitely see why. So this one definitely features a strong note of violet, which is the raw ingredient that they featured. And so it does have a little bit of that makeup-y kind of feel to it. I really like this though. There's also a bit of fruitiness in here, definitely peach. I think there's also plum, it said, yeah. And then it kind of has this like nice warm base of benzoin in here, which is just really, really great. Oh, it's beautiful. Now, I'm not usually that big into violet perfumes, but I sampled this one, when was I? I posted on my Instagram, maybe it was a couple months ago, and I absolutely loved it. And I was surprised because, yeah, usually violet fragrances don't do it for me. There is, I think, a bit of orris or iris in here as well, but this is really, really nice. Definitely, again, sort of because I think it goes a little makeup-y, violet has a little bit of a vintage vibe to it. But again, definitely modernized and something that I think a lot of people would enjoy. I know my friend John from Scented Snowdrops, he loves this fragrance, and I can definitely see why. So again, that one's called Pourpre d'automne. I don't know, but again, another great fragrance from this house. All right, the third fragrance is another that's in contention with Sketch as to the one that I might purchase next, so I really love this one. It's called Un Air de Apogee, and originally they said that this one was just called Apogee, like you see here, but Louis Vuitton has a fragrance called that actually came out right before they were going to release this, so they changed the name to Un Air de Apogee, and let me show you the information here. There you go, let that focus. Okay, so there's the information about this one in case you're curious. So this one is just a really great combination of tobacco and leather and some florals, and I mean, you know, I love those types of notes. Now, the first time I tested this, there was something in it that put me off a little bit, and I found out today what that was because it is a note that I don't like. So even though there's a lot of notes that I do really like in here, I think there's also anise in here, which I like anise quite a bit, but yeah, so I can definitely identify this now. Once I heard them talk about it, there's mimosa in here. And some of you probably know that I don't usually care for mimosa. I still don't care for mimosa, but in here, it does still give a little bit of a nuance that I don't completely love. However, the overall composition is really interesting. And I think in this case, the mimosa has like a little bit of a like slightly green hay-like sort of vibe. Not exactly like a vetiver, but sort of, you know, obviously more floral than that. It does give that same, I always describe it as like a fuzzy kind of texture to a fragrance, and it does give this fragrance that sort of texture, but I also get a lot of that kind of leather and tobacco. Like I said, I think that as a whole, I really like this composition and it's very interesting. So that's kind of why, even though there is mimosa in here that does slightly challenge me, I still am drawn to this fragrance. So again, that one's called Un Air de Apogee, and it's just a really, really unique scent. So those three were the original three releases that Violet came out with when they first kind of revived the brand. And then next, I think, was this one called Tanagra. I might not be saying that correctly, but here is the information on this one. Now, I will tell you, this one I like, but I don't love. And so this is not one that I'm necessarily considering purchasing, but I still do quite enjoy this. This is not the one that I don't really care for. So this one is like a woody floral. There's the raw ingredient that they featured for this one was cedar. And you can definitely get the cedar, which I do really like. I'm a big fan of cedar, but there's also quite a bit of florals in here. I think there's freesia and jasmine. There's a little bit of iris. And so, like, I do really like this. Like, I'm actually a little tempted by this one, but not as much as Sketch and the Un Air de Apogee. So this, they actually said they only kept the name. They do have a bottle of the original fragrance, but they decided to go in a little bit different direction for this one. But the name is a name of a fragrance that Violet actually did originally carry. Still, I think this one is really nice. It's a little softer. I don't think it would project quite as much. No, I guess I have. It's been a long time. I have tried this on skin, but it was like the first time I sampled from Violet, so like back in 2020. But smelling it on paper, I would doubt it projects as well as some of the other ones because it does seem a little softer and more subdued. But still a great woody floral fragrance. And if you're into that kind of combo of the cedar, I mean, cedar and iris, like right up my alley, right? But I think maybe it's like the freesia and jasmine that make this a little less appealing to me, but still I really, really like it. So that one's called Tanagra. Again, I like this one a lot, but I don't think I'll buy a bottle, but you never know. So that brings us to my first love from this house, Nuee Bleue. And again, I already showed you the bottle. I do have a full bottle of this, and I've worn it quite a bit since I purchased it towards the beginning of this year. But this is just a stunning iris fragrance. And in fact, if you watched my iris video that I did recently, I put this as #1. And also Ibitira, I said like kind of like 1A, 1B, but those two are my two favorite iris fragrances. So this has like a citrus kind of opening. There's bergamot, lemon. I think that said there's orange blossom in here. I don't really get a whole lot of that, which is great because I don't love orange blossom. But my God, this like beautiful, clean, maybe slightly soapy iris is just stunning in here. And then there is that like woody, like sandalwood base, and I love it. This iris though is so beautiful. And like no one should be surprised because it's Natalie Lorson, and she and Daniela Andrier, those two women, they, again, I've said it before, but they are like the queens of iris, in my opinion. I don't know that there are many perfumers. I'm sure there are some, but there aren't many perfumers that I think can do iris as well as they are able to do. So this is just absolutely stunning, really bright, perfect for this time of year. I think like spring all the way through early fall is best for Nuee Bleue, but honestly, I just love it, and I would wear it anytime that I want to feel uplifted. It definitely puts me in a good mood. And it's just an absolutely just gorgeous fragrance. So if you're an iris lover and you still haven't tried Nuee Bleue, you can get a sample. You can get it from Tiger Lily, of course, that's where these came from, but also previously I've ordered samples of these fragrances from Indigo Perfumery. You guys know I really like their website as well. But yeah, check them out, especially this one if you're an iris lover, because it's fantastic. All right, and then I have two more fragrances, but only one more from the, I can't remember if they call it the Heritage Collection or whatever, but like from the ones that are based on fragrances from Violet's past. And this is their new release. It just came out like maybe a week or two ago. Maybe slightly longer than that, but not much. This is brand new. So this is called Compliment. And the story behind a lot of these were really cool, but the story behind this one was kind of cool because they said that there's like a saying, I think a French saying where basically like if you're complimenting yourself, it's called like throwing flowers to yourself or something like that. And they wanted to bring this out kind of now because like after, you know, over a year of going through the pandemic and just kind of like everything that's been going on, they wanted something to like kind of embody like feeling good about yourself and complimenting yourself. And so they made this very floral fragrance. Give you a hint, this is the one that I don't love. And the raw ingredient they featured today was tuberose, but I actually think I get more jasmine than tuberose, although I definitely get tuberose as well. In fact, when I first smell it, I first pick up tuberose in the opening, but as it dries down, the jasmine comes out more to me. And tuberose and jasmine are notes that are tricky for me. I don't always hate them, but I often hate them. In this case, I don't hate this, but it is a white floral, and I really have a hard time with white florals. They tend to give me headaches. I don't know what it is about it, but yeah. Anyway, let me, I forgot to show you the information on this one. So let me show you the information on Compliment. So there you go, if you want to pause it. But this one, like I said, it definitely has a lot of tuberose and jasmine. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that they said, oh, benzoin. Honestly, it's just such a white floral to me that I don't pick up personally much more than tuberose and jasmine. I do think that it's well done. Like when I smell this, it smells like a high quality white floral fragrance, but I just don't personally like white florals. If you do though, then Compliment might be a good option for you, especially if you like tuberose and jasmine, because those kind of alternate or take turns being the strongest player in this fragrance, at least to my nose. All right, and last up is a fragrance that basically the idea behind this one, which is called Cycle 001, and you can see the packaging is just totally different for this. But this is meant to be like an evolution of the brand. So like if Violet had stayed in business, you know, like all through the years and never went under, like it's kind of like their interpretation of what they might produce nowadays. And I do think that they've done a good job with this sort of vision. So that's part of the reason why it's called Cycle. Also, it's an eco-friendly. The packaging is all eco-friendly. The actual bottle is different. I'll put a picture here for you guys so you can see the bottle of this one. They said the glass is thinner, so it doesn't, you know, doesn't cause as many carbon emissions to ship these bottles because they weigh a lot less than these ones. The idea behind the Cycle line is that it's limited edition. They will have, like, they only have 001 right now, but they said they do plan to have like 002, 003, etc. But they will be limited runs. However, once you buy it, you can get, I'm assuming you have to purchase it, but you can get unlimited refills. So for example, for Cycle 001, there are 1,000 created, but those 1,000 people who buy this fragrance in the future can get it refilled. It's just that no one who didn't buy the first 1,000 bottles can get it refilled. And I would assume that to get it refilled, you either have to go there or maybe ship your bottle back to them, or maybe they just send you some like eco-friendly packaging refill or something. But anyway, I think it's a really cool idea. And this one's actually the cheapest of their fragrances as well, which is really nice. So the idea behind the limited edition thing is that it's limited in how many people can get it, but they didn't want it to be limited in terms of like the price point. They didn't want to make it so that most people couldn't afford it. So they actually made this one the most affordable of all their fragrances, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so let me show you the inside of this one. You can see totally, again, totally different, much more modern setup here. And there's some information, if it will focus, there's some information about the notes and things like that. Like I said, Natalie Lorson did not do this one. She did all the other ones, but not this one. This one, like I said, was done by, I think it's Patrice Reviard. And I will say that this does have some similarities to Ooh La La, I think. I should get that out. Maybe I'll do that in just a second here. But I do find some similarities to Ooh La La, which I really, really like. It's an iris fragrance. This one has iris in it, but the main note here is angelica. And oh, so the raw ingredient of angelica, wow, it is much sharper than I expected. I never smelled it in isolation, and it's more green than I even expected. Like, I know it has, like, to me, it does have some sort of green vibe to it, but it's more green and a little bit more sharp and pungent than I expected in isolation. So anyway, that was kind of cool to smell. So this has the angelica, the iris. It has definitely musk, vetiver. I pick up a lot of that. And then also it says it has pink pepper, incense, and ambroxan. I can get the ambroxan for sure. The incense is really light, and the pink pepper is detectable. That one is detectable in the opening, at least. I think in the dry down I did not pick up that as much, but I do find this to be a really pleasant, easy to wear fragrance. This is the first time I've smelled this one and Compliments. Those weren't available to sample previously, at least not where I was looking. But I actually am tempted to buy this one too. So Cycle 001, the Untitled Apogee, and Sketch are the three that I'm really kind of debating which one to purchase. This is a really easy wear though, and I think, you know, you could wear it all year round. It's not super strong, so it's probably not something I would wear at nighttime, but this would be just an easy everyday kind of fragrance. Now, I guess the thing that's deterring me from it is that I do think it is a little bit similar to Ooh La La, which I have, but I am still quite tempted by this one. All right, so I did go grab my Ooh La La real quick just to compare, and I sprayed them, and side by side, honestly, they're not that similar. But it's like you can tell that they're made by the same person. They have a similar style of like creation. They both have an airiness to them, but I would say that Ooh La La is definitely heavier, probably because of the hazelnut and the tobacco that's in here, whereas the Cycle fragrance is definitely lighter. I think that they're both very easy wears, but yeah. You could totally own both of them because they are different enough. They have some overlapping notes like the orris or iris, but in general, they definitely are different fragrances for sure. It's just that, I don't know why, but it immediately reminded me of Ooh La La. And I suppose it probably is because it was created by the same person and he probably has a specific style that he tends to work in. All right, so that is my house overview of Maison Violet. This is a house that I've talked about on my channel several times before because I have been very impressed with them since I first sampled them last year. But after today, honestly, I appreciate them even more because the history is so interesting. The inspirational, like the stories behind each fragrance is really interesting. And then on top of that, you can just tell that the guys who own this brand, they are very passionate about fragrance in general and specifically about the heritage behind Maison Violet, which I just think is really, really cool. I also think that the fragrances, although not cheap, or at least the heritage line I wouldn't say is cheap by any means, because these I think are about $175 for 75 mils, so that's on the more expensive side. However, I think that they're worth it because I think the quality is so high in these fragrances, and obviously I love them. But the Cycle 001, I think that one's actually a really great deal because it's 100 mils for $105, which is actually less than a lot of designer fragrances out there. So I think what they're asking is fair for what has been put into this and the quality of the actual fragrances themselves. I would love to know if you all have tried any fragrances from this house yet, and if so, what are your favorites? Put them down below. Maybe that will help me decide which one I should buy next. But I do hope that this video was helpful. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.